Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another EU book review. And today we are on book 3, the final book in the Lando Calrissian Adventure Trilogy. And that is Lando Calrissian and the Starcave of ThonBoka. Or ThonBoka, however you'd like to pronounce it. And this is the final book in what has arguably been a very arduous trilogy to get through. So what is Vuffi Ra and Lando Calrissian up to in their final escapade? Still gambling. Still looking for places to make a quick buck. But along the way, they discover a race of hyper-intelligent species of manta ray. This is a race of creatures that evolved not on a planet, but they evolved in the barrenness and depth of space. They're giant, intelligent, for lack of a better term, manta rays, 500 to 700 meters long. And they have the ability to travel through hyperspace all on their own. They all have individual organic hyperspace drives. And there's millions of them. Millions of them, and they live in this region of space that's enclosed from everybody else. So they evolved pretty much on their own. They don't know anything about the rest of the galaxy. They just evolved into this little, what they call the Starcave. That's how they evolved. And so one of them, a very young member of the species, winds up going out and venturing out into the galaxy, and that's how he meets, his name is Lehesu, and that's how he meets the Falcon. And he makes friends with the Falcon, and then after meeting Lando and Vuffi, he decides to go on and explore the rest of the galaxy. And eventually he runs into the Empire. And then he comes back, and then the Empire all of a sudden become aware that there's this race of super intelligent creatures that have the ability to outnumber us and have the ability to travel through hyperspace all on their own. So they are clearly a threat. So the Empire sends an entire flotilla of destroyers and cruisers to this Starcave with the explicit purpose of committing genocide, of wiping them all out. Of course, we also have Roker Gepta, who is still pissed off about Lando, still wants to kill Lando, still wants to go after Lando. And then we have Klein Shanga, who is still pissed off at Vuffi Ra because he claims that Vuffi was part of a team that butchered his entire planet. So the Empire is after the manta rays. Roker is after Lando. Klein is after Vuffi. And they all meet up in this Starcave with the manta rays sort of caught in the middle. And of course Lando is like, well, we must stop the Empire from killing the creatures. And we must defend them. And they do. And they do. They do wind up repelling the Empire. Lando comes up with this outrageous plan to defeat the Empire. Klein Shanga realizes that Vuffi Ra was not the butcher of his homeworld, that the Adefa Wet, Asuno Wet was actually the butcher. So he goes off and kills him, gets his revenge. Roker challenges Lando to a one-on-one duel in space. Literally in space. In spacesuits. Dueling in vacuum. And Lando eventually kills Roker. So Lando gets some peace. And then on top of all of this, the hyper-intelligent race of machines that created Vufira, that live in the outside the galaxy, have finally come back and said, Vuffy, we're your makers. Yay, we've come back to rescue you and come home with us. And so Vuffy does that. He leaves Lando and he goes back to his maker. He goes back with his people, his droid people. And then Lando, one of the last things Lando thinks about is, as he's leaving this whole scenario, and he does wind up with quite a lot of money. He says, maybe I got enough money I could go buy myself a city. Right? That's the bridge to Empire. He said, maybe I can, maybe I got all this money, maybe I'll go buy a city in the clouds. Maybe that's a good idea. And that's how they sort of tie the books to Empire. So yeah, that's the story of Lando and the Starcaves. Again, same issues that I had all through this trilogy have riddled in this book as well. I am super glad that I'm over, that I finished it. I highly doubt this is going to be a trilogy that I'm going to read again. Now, to give L. Neil Smith some credit, right? We've complained a lot about how this feels like this is too much of a human universe, too much like our universe, and that there's hardly any mention of anything Star Wars in these books. To the author's credit, I did read and learn about his dealings with Lucasfilm back in the 80s when he was writing these books. His idea of what he wanted to do was vastly different from what Lucasfilm allowed him to do. He originally wanted to make Roker Gepta, his main villain in this book, a Sith Lord, like Vader. He wanted to make him another Sith. And Lucas said, nay, the Sith are off limits. Which is why L. Neil Smith had to create the Sorcerers of Tund. And when you read the book, and you read the trilogies, and you read what Roker can do, you're like, that sounds a lot like the Force. You know, they call it magic in the book, but it really sounds like Force abilities, and that's because it was supposed to be. They really are Force creatures, these sorcerers. He just couldn't call them Sith. So that's how that went. And also when he was having his discussions with Lucasfilm about the stories, Lucasfilm essentially told L. Neil Smith that he could not use anything that was in the movies in his books. Nothing. As a matter of fact, he apparently had to fight with Lucasfilm to allow him to include the Falcon in the book. And that was their only concession. They told him, you can't use anything from the movies in your books. No mention. Will allow you to use the Falcon. But that's the only thing from the movies that you can use in your book. So, to be fair, it's not really a criticism on the author to say his books don't feel like Star Wars books when Lucasfilm themselves essentially chopped him off at the knees and told him, no, you can write a story about Lando, but you can't use anything from the movies. Seems to be a really crazy caveat that Lucasfilm would say that, because you would think that they would want their media to tie into their movies so people would go see their movies. But, you know, George has some really odd ideas about holding things close to the vest, and he still does. So I'm not surprised that Lucasfilm put the kibosh on some of what L. Neil Smith wanted to do. It's just unfortunate because I think if they had allowed him more freedom, the books might have been just a scooch better. And I decided for this book, kind of wish I had decided this all along, but I decided that I was going to keep a list of all the things that Lando calls Woofy. Remember I said that he likes to call Woofy old something or other. He has the old buddy, old pal, old friend. He has this sort of penchant of calling him something old with a descriptor. I have a list of all the things that Lando has called Woofy and others in this book that I would like to read to you to end the video. And this is some of the things, these are the things that Lando has said. Old can opener. Old flatfish. Old gumball machine, Woofy. Old beanbag. Old corkscrew. Old fire extinguisher. Old friend. That's a normal one. Old pacifist. Old go-between. My personal favorite. Old Saturday night spatial. I don't really know what that even means. Old jellyfish. And finally, old manta. All the beloved words of Lando to Woofy Ra and to Lehesu. So guys, that is my review of Lando Calrissian and the Starcave of ThonBoka. We are finally through the Lando Calrissian Adventure Trilogy. We never have to read it again. The next book in the chronology of the expanded universe that we're going to be reading is Star Wars: The Force Unleashed by Sean Williams, which is the novelization of the video game by the same name. So this is what we will be reading and reviewing next. So guys, that was my review of a very tough trilogy to get through. And if you've gotten through it, tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me what you think about Lando and what you think about this trilogy and what you think about some of these old EU books from the 80s and 70s. What's your thoughts and opinions on those? And as always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, share it around, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your old waffle makers that they should tune in. And until next time, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and I will see you in the next review.